So welcome everyone to the Aaru 5.3 LTS launch party. Today we got a bunch of fantastic developers here, we got the technical committee here, and we got other stakeholders here as well. So I'm super excited to be facilitating this, but instead of talking about me, I want to talk about you all. So let's do a round of introductions here. Up top I have Natalia.
Hello, I'm Natalia. I'm the lead developer of the Aaru project. I started this project in 2011 as a way to preserve my own collection of operating systems. And in these years, about 10 years already, it has evolved as the most complete solution to preserve, always with a goal of preservation, proper preservation, and repeating myself, for how archivers will do on real missions. So that has always been my goal.
Awesome. Next up, we have Michael.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael from Germany. I'm a part-time developer and preserver. I have lots of disks that I'm dumping on a regular basis and publishing on Archive and other sites. And I use Aaru a lot, and I develop quite a bit for it from time to time if Natalia kicks me in the ass strong enough. Yep, I'm basically part user, part developer of Aaru.
Awesome. Thank you. And next up, we have Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. I'm also part-time developer or professional developer working on Aaru, and part-time archiver, preservationist, trying to help whenever I can.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Then I'm gonna go next with Matt.
Hi, I'm also randomly part-time developer. I've used Aaru actually only for about the past year or so, but I've kind of dove in as as things got more and more interesting with the project. So I've been really happy to get involved with the project, doing testing, and also working on some auxiliary programs that happen to use Aaru and Aaru format.
Awesome. Thank you. Next up, we have Joseph.
Hello from Tokyo. I'm Joseph. I'm not a developer. As a president, head of the Game Preservation Society of Japan. So here in Japan, we are mostly working on floppy disks, but we have very high expectations with Aaru for our next projects.
Sounds good. And next up, we have Robin.
Hi everyone, so I'm Robin from Cinémathèque Suisse, which is the Swiss National Film Archives. I'm a digital archivist over there, and on my free time, I am member of the Musée Bolo, which is the Swiss Museum of Computer Science and Video Games.
Fantastic. And I'm Jonas Rossland. I'm the executive director for HitSave, a US-based 501c3 nonprofit focused on video game preservation and video game history. So yeah, today, first of all, Aaru 5.3 has launched today. I think that's worthy of a round of applause. Congratulations, everyone. I know you've been working really hard on the 5.3 release here, and this is also an LTS release. But before we dive into what LTS is and things like that, Natalia, maybe you can talk a little about what Aaru is and how it got started.
Well, Aaru is basically a tool for the management of all the levels of preservation of computing media, including floppies, compact discs, DVDs, and so on. From the point of acquisition, that's what usually is called dumping. So you get the media, you put it on a drive, and you copy the contents of that media into a file. That's called a media image. And then from that file, you analyze the contents, see the contents, and extract the contents. So Aaru is a tool designed to help you on all of that levels, from acquisition, imaging, dumping, and extraction of the contents and analysis. It started as a personal need because I'm a computer archivist, so I have a huge collection of all operating systems in floppies and CDs. And the problem I had is some of that items on the collection were already digital, came in different formats, others were not archived properly. For example, the early version of BIOS, the early releases on BIOS that were exclusive to Japan, they are multi-session, and multi-session support on other tools is flaky, to say the least. So it came the need to create a tool that allowed it to work on all the levels of preservation. And because I have always intended to do it as a museum grade, the goal has always been to be able to, whatever the tools you have, be able to get the best part of that digital media that you can. We cannot be picky with what tool we have, because if we extrapolate like real archaeology, when you go to Egypt, you have the tools you have and you have to save the artifacts there. And you cannot say, okay, these tools are not adequate because the artifact tomorrow is destroyed. So you need to save them now. So that's my point of view, that whatever are your tools, try to get the best from the digital media and also analog media in the future, I hope.
Fantastic. So, with the 5.3 release, this is now an LTS release. What does that mean?
Well, the thing is that in the evolution of Aaru, there has been some points that we didn't expect of digital media. For example, on CDs, there's the concept of negative sectors, and on DVDs, there's the concept of having different partitions and sessions. And that means we need to do very deep changes to the code, changes that may break things, and Word 7 changes that may break things without knowing. So the idea behind this is, before we start doing these dangerous changes, have a version that's stable enough and maintain it, so museums, archivists, on any kind of user can keep using it knowing that it's going to work. So whatever is already implemented on the long-term support version is going to work. And if it doesn't, we will put a fix on that. Meanwhile, on the background, we can continue on other features that are not needed anymore, on changes that may break, and continue testing without having behind us the need to urgently fix something that's not working properly for a museum. So that there's always this version that's working now, is fully tested, it will keep working, and then we can make crazy changes on the new version without affecting the users.
Awesome. So, new users of Aaru should definitely aim for this release. This is something that you will support for a long time throughout the development of the next release.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. So, what's new in 5.3? Can you give us some of the highlights?
Well, if you give me a moment, because the list of changes is indeed very big.
Of course.
So there are about 117 changes in this month, so 10 months on the last version. So you allow me a moment so I get a list of the most important changes. So one of the most important changes has come from Rebecca, is that now we support dumping DVDs with the copy protection, the CSS copy protection. Of course, before doing that, you must consult your local laws. But for some preservation, you need to be able to read the DVD, a movie DVD that's copy protected. And that's one of the important changes.
That's
So,
that's a really big one, for sure.
Do you want to add something about this change, Rebecca?
Not really. It should work. There are some copy protections that don't work. It is called Arcos, which is a Sony copy protection. It's sort of an extension of CSS. Still don't work, but I'm working on it. So hopefully for 6.0, we'll have more copy protections defeated, or at least preserved.
Nice. Yeah, we have a ton of DVDs here, of course, that we want to preserve. So having that support within Aaru is fantastic.
Let me just add that it's not, you can use Aaru without decrypting. So as Natalia was saying, if you don't want to break any law, it's not activated by default, I think, or at some point you will be asked the question, do you want to activate descrambling? So which is also good, so that you can still use Aaru. And if you stumble upon something that's copy protected and you don't want to break any copy protection, then you can safely use Aaru if you configure it to not descramble. So that's something very good to have implemented, and I was quite happy with that because I do handle quite a lot of DVDs. Sometimes some of them are video DVDs, and at the moment we are not really sure if we want to break the protection. So it's easier if we just disable it, and if we do a dump, then we will have a dump with encrypted data, which is not an issue, at least for the moment.
Yeah, that's a really good point. As we have been dumping DVDs here as well, since we've been doing that for months now, it's something that I completely forgot. So it's a really good point to make.
Yeah, that also shows a characteristic of Aaru that the tool gives the power to the user to choose exactly what to do. So power users can change the default configuration, while we, the developer team, has tried to set up same defaults. You can override all defaults and try say crazy things. And obviously, the same default right now is that any kind of encryption is not broken, because in most of the world is illegal unless you have a specific authorization. So the user must enable it manually.
Awesome. What else is new in 5.3?
So one new thing that has been already for the people that have been using the betas is Aaru Remote. While the Aaru Remote itself is still not finished, it's still a work in progress, but all the infrastructure is set in. So because many people have computers that are too old to use Aaru, or don't support .NET because Aaru is done in .NET, or they have computers that have a disk and they cannot or don't want to open the computer to extract the disk. So the possibility that Remote does is that it allows you to use another machine on a network to do all the drive operations. For example, you have a Macintosh. There's one case that was recently done for one of our users, that they have Power Macintosh G3, and they could put Linux on the Power Macintosh G3, but that user didn't have any SCSI card to connect that hard disk to another computer that supported Aaru. So what he did, he put the Linux on the Power Macintosh G3, and using Aaru Remote, he got a copy of that SCSI disk through the network. That's the possibility of Aaru Remote. And the plans for the future for Aaru Remote is to support as many, if not all, operating systems as possible, because it's a very small piece of software, so it doesn't really need maintenance. Once it's working, it's just going to work. Also, it's one of the ways I'm going to implement support for dumping some console video game discs, like the Wii U disc that can only be read on a Wii U. So the idea is that instead of like normal dumping solutions that you only have an ISO generator and no any power at all to do anything, just create an ISO from the Wii U disk. The Aaru Remote will give you all the power of Aaru to get the disk, get parts of the disk that are not supported by ISO, everything just through the Wi-Fi network support from the Wii U console itself.
I think that's a really powerful feature to be able to dump on a console itself from a remote location. Well, usually, you most likely you'll be in the same room, but you have that possibility.
Yes.
So you can use the original hardware to actually do a proper dump of the game.
Exactly, that's the idea. Right now, the Aaru Remote is, as I said, this is still a work in progress. It's mostly working for Linux, FreeBSD, and modern version of Windows, but there are no binaries, so you just have to compile it and pray that it works. But it's going to get, and from before we get to the next version, Aaru Remote have releases independently of Aaru. So before we get to the next version of Aaru, I intend to at least support the major architectures. So Linux, Mac, and Windows. So any computer that has a Windows version, if it's Windows XP or Windows 2000 or Macintosh 10.2 or all version of these three architectures will be able to run Aaru Remote. And from that, my intention is to get all the consoles that have network support, being the Dreamcast, Wii U, PlayStation 3, support for that.
That's awesome. Would you count PlayStation 2 in there too?
The problem with PlayStation 2 is that it's not really neat. So the PlayStation 2 has the DVDs that are readable on normal PC, and same from the CDs. I may explore the issue because maybe someone wants to do it just for the sake of doing it. But PlayStation 2 is not in the near future because you can just use a PC drive normally to preserve the games from PlayStation 2.
That sounds good. What else is new?
So we have worked a lot on support of images made by third-party software. And what I mean by third-party software is not the usual. So we are Aaru and we support the images created by other software, like for example, Nero, Alcohol. But these two, Nero and Alcohol, will be second-party software. So third-party software is another software that's not Nero and creates Nero images, or another software that's not Alcohol and creates Alcohol images. Also the same for the typical WinQue file, that's really the CDR Win file. So the problem with all this software is that sometimes they didn't get right how the format works. And while most of the times the image they create is usable, there are some changes, so they will not be compatible with the original software. So we put a lot of effort on detecting these changes and detecting these images when created by third-party software that are completely invalid. To put an example, Magic ISO is the worst offender because when that software creates a DOM in the QFC format, the CDR Win format, is completely wrong. And we can recover the data from it. But if you try to create an image of a DVD with Magic ISO, you will not know something happening, but the dump is garbage. There is no error. The software will just create an image and is missing like 5% of the disk in the image. So we have implemented code to work around when their books create an image that's still usable and detect when their image is complete garbage, so we can tell the user. And we also try with all the support images we have, for example, with alcohol and clone CD, sorry, with alcohol and clone CD. We added support from some later features that they added to their images. And for Nero, we have added support even for the Nero version 4 image. So we have, in these 10 months, we have expanded and tested a lot of the implementation of our support for the images made from other software.
That's fantastic. I love seeing the support for these third-party applications and third-party applications that are making these types of images. That's definitely one of the main reasons why I'm really like Aaru, the possibility of managing other images created by other types of software. It's a really big feature.
That was indeed how everything started. So how everything started was just handling images made by Nero, Alcohol, and Clone CD, and we have evolved. And right now we have supported, if I'm not wrong counting, I think it's about 74 different image formats, not including our own.
74?
Yes.
That's a lot of formats. That's awesome. What else is new?
So also we have about new, not really new, one thing that we fixed because nobody tested it before, nobody used it before, is reading the secure digital and multimedia card. So this is a complicated matter because most of the people use readers that just present those cards as they were floppies, but these cards are quite more complex than that. So usually you need a special kind of reader that's normally only found on laptops and not even on all laptops to allow you to read the complete card. Because this is so rare that mostly nobody has it. Well, nobody tested it, but it's needed to, for example, properly preserve the multimedia cards from the Nokia Engage system. You need to use this controller, not just your random USB secure digital or multimedia card adapter. And nobody had tested, so it's already fixed. It's working, and we have a plan for the future because the problem with these cards, the security data multimedia, is that they have a changing voltage. For protection, both the Windows and Linux kernel doesn't allow you to read all the parameters of the card because it's something that the moment you plug in the card, the kernel driver does, checks the parameters, the voltage parameter, sets them, and doesn't allow you to change or read them. So you don't know if the card you're using is a 3.3 volts, a 2.5 volts, or 1.8 volts. So you cannot really preserve that characteristic of the card. So we're planning to create a very small and very, very cheap hardware adapter to be able to dump these cards without having to dig up a laptop that has this adapter and bypassing all the kernel protections that are preventing us from properly preserving this kind of memory card.
Nice. But you mentioned no one tested this before, so we're looking for testers right now.
Yeah, not right now. We have testers already, and we tested it for 5.3. But this feature was added in version 4. I added it because at that moment I had a laptop that has already died that had support to this kind of controller, and since I added it in version 4, nobody tested it until a few months ago when we were preparing for the release, and I got it tested.
Cool. Do you have any other big news with 5.3?
Yeah, there's one thing I want to talk about. We already had support for the FAT file system, but the thing is that right now we're the most complete implementation of the FAT file system. Because normally people think about the FAT file system and they say, okay, this is the Windows file system. But the file system was used in many other machines, including, for example, in the Japanese Sharp machines, and the X68000 machines, and they used a special way of modifying the FAT file system to store the Japanese file, the Japanese text. Nobody else supports that, as far as I know. Also, Atari ST did an incompatible support for hard disk, and thanks for from Robin, we have tested it, and our implementation right now supports all of the known variants of the FAT file system, from the Japanese machines, from the Atari machine, and so on. We have, as far as I know, the most complete implementation of the FAT file system. And in the same way, we also have the most complete implementation of the ISO file system, that's the one normally used in CDs, as well as the variations, the High Sierra, that's the predecessor, and the CD interactive file system. We support all the variants. We support the Apple variant. We support the Acorn variant. We support the Amiga variant. We support the ROC ISO extensions. So these are some things that this morning someone was asking me why the Macintosh file system is not yet done, because yeah, it's easy to just do it, but so you just put support, test it when one disk, it works. Okay, I have it done. No, this is not the philosophy we take at Aaru. We try to make it work with every variation and test it with hundreds, if needed be, of different variants. So for the Macintosh support, for example, I've been saving this for every version of MacOS, including the beta version of MacOS, from the 0.7 release up to 9.9.2. I have saved about 25 different images for each version of MacOS to implement the Mac file system support. It's something that you can just do it because the pride we have in Aaru is that we try to do it the most complete implementation. Obviously, we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. We're not free of bugs. There are always bugs hidden in the darker shadows of the code, but we try to make it the most complete because we never know where a disk that we need to preserve, our mission needs to preserve, comes from. And we need to be able to say with warranty that Aaru is going to support that disk. So that's why I try to get all the variations, and that's something I want people to have in mind, that it's not just as simple as saying, okay, I get the file system code, put it in 1 or 2 days. Yeah, I can get it put in 1 or 2 days, the file system code. But then testing that it properly works with all disks that we can imagine throwing at it, that's what takes time. And thanks to that time taking, we have the most complete implementation of the FAT file systems and the ISO, iSierra, and Compatis interactive file system.
That's fantastic.
If I can step in, Jonas and Natalia. So I was I was in contact with someone who dumped hard drives from, is it Atari Falcon? I think it might be Atari Falcon. And that person had a clear dump using another tool that was not Aaru, and then tried to extract the files, because the objective was getting the files to someone else who obviously was not able to access the files on the hard drive. And the only way that person managed to get the file was to get an Atari Falcon emulator, plug the hard drive, and then try to extract the files from an emulated version. And he said to me, "Oh, that took me like half a day, a full day of finding how to do all of this." And then I said, "Oh, have you tried to just do Aaru file system extract from it?" And then he tried, and he had some issues because we had still some bugs. And quickly I did report the bug to Natalia, and quickly the bug was fixed. And the guy tried again, and in like instant he got all the files clean, all the file names clean, also because he knew he couldn't keep the files. Obviously the timestamps were kept, because instead of copying from machines to machines where you will lose timestamps, he kept everything from the fs extract function, which is a function that we are using quite a lot at Cinémathèque Suisse, because we do dumps of media that needs to be evaluated by our archivist. Is that as a digital archivist, I will try to bring them the files in a format that they can read. So I need to extract the files from images. I need to convert them so that they can obviously do their work of archivist. Do we keep it? Do we not keep it? And so basically our workflow will be doing a dump and then doing an extraction each time. So I did quite a lot of tests for the extraction, and I did quite a lot of reports to Natalia, and that's good that we have a tool. And as Natalia said, obviously we would like to support every file system, and obviously any Macintosh file system is quite popular. And working in the Cinémathèque in the audiovisual industry is mostly, unfortunately, mostly Macintosh file systems. But it does work if, as Natalia said, either it works very well and you know it's going to work in corner edges because Natalia and the rest of the team have been very careful, or if it's not working well, it just tells you it's not working. If not trying to do a half-baked job and pretend that it's doing part of the job, and then you lose files or you miss, or the file names might be wrong. So you have to be patient and let the team develop and test everything. But when it's released and when it's working, then you have something where you can rely on, and which is something it's very important, because if you start a big campaign of, I don't know, dumping hundreds or thousands of CDs, and then you figure out that you had a bug somewhere and you've missed a few things, then obviously it's a lot of work to go back and do everything again. So yeah, that's something, and that's why Natalia is also pushing for a long-term support, so that everyone can just rely on the long-term support versions 5.3, and then obviously the 6.0 will be a more a wide ride, because it will be, you won't have the same kind of quality seal that you can have on the 5.3.
Yeah, I'm super excited to begin starting to use. There we go. I can't speak today. 5.3 as well. Is there anything you want to close off with 5.3? Natalia, Michael, Rebecca.
well, not really everything has already been said of, but as always, just use it for your needs, and if something fails, don't hesitate to tell us. The thing about the long-term support doesn't mean that there's 5.3 and there's not going to be anything above. So if you discover any bug that is not getting the proper data, it's not, as Robin said, showing you an error that is not getting the data. So what you call a silent data corruption, don't hesitate to tell us, and we will release point releases of the long-term support to fix any kind of silent corruption that we detect or we are reported of. Because the thing with this is that we can only test so much. We need our users to use them, to know, and not only to use them, just to tell us. So if you see something that you don't like, you see something that fails, don't go around and say, okay, I don't like this tool. Just come and tell us, and we work on it.
Awesome. So I want to dive into some use cases. Robin already touched on this. I know Matt, you might have some meetings as well. So I want to touch a little bit on your implementation of Aaru, or rather, you're building on top of Aaru. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. A little earlier this year, I got interested in one of the kind of offshoot projects within the Aaru DPS project called Redbook Player. I had previously worked with some of the sidecar data, and I did some very basic reading of the Aaru format for one of my other programs as well to get some of the internal hashes, but nothing really that complicated. But I was introduced to this kind of extremely alpha program called Redbook Player that allows you to play, well, Redbook audio from Aaru image format, Aaru format images. I found it to be really cool, and then development just kind of slowed down for a while, and we didn't really hear anything. I'm like, hey, I want to take a stab at this. And that has led to me doing a lot of extra coding that I wasn't anticipating, but I ended up doing some rewrites, adding new features and stuff like that, and honestly, I'm really happy with where it is right now. You can play audio CDs or CDs with audio tracks, so like PlayStation discs that had audio tracks, or IBM discs, or stuff like that, and honestly, I'm excited to see where we can take this. It's one of the most full-featured implementations that uses Aaru at this point. It relies very heavily on a lot of things that Aaru format does that a lot of other formats can't, which is really, really nice. And we can rely on subchannels existing, we can rely on a lot of functionality, we can make sure that things are the right size, and I don't have to really think about it. Aaru just handles it. And that's really nice as a developer.
That's awesome. I want to talk about Redbook Player, and definitely going to dive into Aaru format a bit more today as well. But you also build a tool called MPF.
Yes. MPF, if anyone had used it before, it used to be called DICUI because of the program that it only wrapped before. But MPF is the media preservation front end, and it's a UI tool that makes it easier to use dumping tools such as Aaru, and then extract the relevant information so you know what this disk is, what it's about. It also makes it easier for first-time users who may not be familiar with command line or happy with using command line, and have a very simple visual interface to just get their disks or their media dumped. It has grown also, along with most of the other projects that I maintain, but it has grown to the point where we can read all the sidecar data, we can scan the disks, all that sort of stuff, and hopefully for most users it would be one-click operation, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for with that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been using MPF for quite a while now, and it's so simple. When I first started using it, I'm like, it can't be this simple. It has something's missing, because I'm used to using command line tools, and I was like, I can't just click and dump and it's complete, right? So I'm super happy to have that. It's been really, really useful.
Great to hear.
All right, I want to dive into Joseph's use cases a bit here. So what are you looking to do with Aaru? And can you explain a bit what GPS's plan with Aaru is?
Yes, right. We have many projects at the Game Preservation Society. First, I am a heavy user of the Redbook player.
It was originally something that you thought up, was it?
Yes, right. Because it's not directly related to games. Well, you might think it's not, but we have a complete collection of game soundtracks released in the 80s and 90s. And in order to reproduce the experience of listening to audio CDs, we really needed a Redbook emulation. I mean, a CD deck soft emulator. So with Aaru now, we are able to start this new project of preserving all audio CDs, and I think it will also help other communities, maybe not game related. I was mostly thinking about large communities of people listening to classic musics and still relying on old CDs. But also we have some new projects here in Japan. We are working tightly with Japanese institutions, and we are going to help them to migrate large collections of floppy disks and then CDs and maybe DVDs. So there are numerous systems in Japan which are very different from the ones available in the West. So this is where I have very high expectations. So we can have a single tool to gather and migrate everything.
Awesome. So is the plan to start with audio CDs and then go to other systems?
The idea, yes. For internal needs of the Game Preservation Society, we'll start first with audio CDs, with anything related to Redbook. Then slowly we'll move on to CD-ROMs, Yellow Book, and but in order to help Japanese institutions, first we'll work on anything from floppy disks, optical medias. But I'm pretty sure Aaru will be able to do the job here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course, Aaru is the software part, so we also need good hardware in order to extract the analog information. So for this, we'll use Pauline, which was created, yes, with help of other organizations, and is today heavily used by GPS.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I got this in the mail this week, so I'm setting it up. I'm going to start using the Pauline next week. I'm so excited for this. Thank you, Robin, for helping me procure this, and thank you to everyone, GPS included here, of course, who's been instrumental in creating this piece of hardware here. All right, Robin, I know you dove a little bit into your use case before, but do you want to expand a bit on your use case with Aaru?
Yeah, so as I work as a digital archivist for the Cinémathèque Suisse, so it's the National Swiss Film Archives. So we have two stream of media coming. So we have a stream from directors and anyone working in the industry that will be willing to give what they've been using. So sometimes you will get full computers, like, oh, this is my Atari ST when I was working in the film industry. Do you want it? And you can pick up anything you find on it. Then you will find some removable media like floppy disk, SideQuest, zip disk, jazz disk. So you will have a diversity of media. So that will be from the archive department, and then we have a department who is more in relation with anything that's related to promotion of the movies. And usually, starting in the end of the 90s, you will have media sent to the press or sent to the Cinemathèque that will be containing mostly promotional files. So it will be images at the beginning and some text, and then it will start slowly to be a bit more elaborated. You will have at some point some like interactive CD where it's sometimes even executable, and then you have the issue is that how do you emulate all these like interactive CDs and everything. And we have tons of optical. We have, I think we at the last count we did, it was most around 5,000 optical medias that we have, which is mostly promotional content. So there's a lot of images, there's a lot of documents that just press kits from all those like studios. So what I've been doing since I started to use Aaru and since I started to work there, which was just over a year now, I started to try to obviously find a way of getting the data of all the media. So we have not started to do mass digitalization of the media. So we've tried all the media. So we did some dumps of floppies with Pauline. Afterwards, I was using Aaru to get the files from the images. So I'm using Pauline to get the flux image, and then I'm using I'm not using Aaru yet for directly extracting because I don't think yet the Pauline flux format is supported, but that's something I'm sure Natalia can work on very quickly. But so I'm converting from flux image format to raw image format, and then from the raw image format I will do just a file extract, and then I will get the files. So that's what I was working on.
Nice.
And on optical media, well, I had like a bunch of media I took from that big collection, and then I started using Aaru and tried to see how things were working. Can I extract everything? And that's how we are building, and now we are quite confident that we can use Aaru. And we're quite confident also that it's giving enough metadata. So that's something very important. And that's something that Aaru is quite good at, is capturing as much metadata. So being, for example, the kind of device you use for the dumping, obviously any kind of metadata about the media. And that's also very useful because we get everything in files. And then because we are looking into doing a bit of a mass dumping, then obviously we'll have something that will be developed by the IT department, which will take files, so metadata files, the Aaru format files, and then do everything like extracting the metadata, putting it in databases, automating file extraction, and then the rest of the process that we will do, which is something specific, not specific to the Cinemathèque, but specific to long-term preservation, is that we will take all the files, identify the formats, and then do a conversion of the formats that are not easy to read nowadays, which means that cannot open easily on a Windows 10 machine, and then we will convert it to more recent formats so that the archivist can actually see the content and read the content and then take a decision on do we keep this file or not. And that's as soon as we decided this, then I will obviously put the files somewhere so they are safe with multiple copies, checksums everywhere, and have the long-term archival of all these files and content and media information extracting from the medias.
Awesome. Sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
Yes, I agree. It's a right time now to add Flux compatibility, so we can do everything using only one software. So being able to read Flux from Pauline directly on Aaru would be very great in near future.
I'm working on it.
Yay!
It will happen.
It's 6.0. It's a new 6.0 requirement.
Yeah, as we have said before, Aaru is not just do it's do it properly. So while our recommended tool is Pauline, by far, the recommended tool for Fluxes, we need to support all the Flux formats of all the little tools that everybody has just decided to launch randomly. So it's not as simple as just supporting this. And also we need to try with, I have already Flux images of about 500 different formats, different floppy formats. So we need to ensure that if Joseph or Jonas or anyone gets a Flux image from a computer that only had like, I don't know, for example, the Lisa computer, the tweety floppy from the Lisa computer, they had 25 software releases. That's the total. We need to be sure that that strange format that nobody has used it before, we can dump up 25 formats. Those 25 floppies, those 25 releases. So we need to ensure that our Flux support is excellent. Or at least if it fails, that it fails so spectacularly that you know it failed. That it doesn't give you data that is not valid. So that's also another thing to change for Aaru 6 because we're not reporting errors. When something fails, it fails spectacularly. So we're changing that a little on for 6.0 to still fail, but then it's failing, not just broke, not just explode in your face. But yeah, Flux support is coming, and it's one of the priorities. 6.0. So it's one of the first things that we want to support in Aaru and in our file format Aaru format.
Let's see. There we go. Robin seems to have a bit of technical issues right now, so he'll stay there. Let me know when you are online again, Robin. That's really cool. So that's something that that you're working towards for 6.0. That's great to hear. All right, so I wanted to dive into what we do as well. So hit save. We have a bunch of CDs and DVDs. That's what we use Aaru for right now. So one of the biggest reasons that we use Aaru is, of course, the compatibility, but then also the possibility of changing from Aaru format, which I want to dive into a little as well, change from Aaru format to a bunch of other formats. So we can use them in different ways, in emulators or in other applications. This is just fantastic for that. And then also the compression and deduplication is very useful because we don't have to have as much storage when it comes to Aaru dumps. So it really helps there too. And especially when you have hundreds or thousands of these dumps, having them be just a tiny bit smaller definitely helps when it comes to storing everything. So it's super useful to have this. I'm really, really excited for the future of Aaru. I'm excited for to start using 5.3. And I'm also very excited to be able to use it with this maybe next year. So I want to dive into the Aaru format a bit, and then I want to go into the future 6.0 and what you want to do there too. So Aaru format. Tell me, how did this come about? What is it, and why is it really important for preservation?
So one problem that I found when I started adding support for many different images, like said before, from the clone CD, from QEMU, copyright for hard disk, or ADF for Amiga floppies, the common problem I found is that none of them can store all information that a drive can provide out the menu. So for example, on CDs, we have multi-sessions, we have the table of contents, we have the sub-channels, we have the data intersession in the middle of the sessions. If we go to DVDs, it becomes even worse because we have the PFI. The PFI doesn't boast it on recordables. We have the ADIP on the plus recordable. So we start adding things and things and things and things. And none of the images support all of them. Not to say that most of the images don't support most of that data. So most of this data from a media is just lost. But some people say it's not needed. Well, while I agree that it may not be needed, what I also think is that I don't want. I'm an archivist. I archive. They want to decide what to do with that archive. It's not me. So the idea behind Aaru format is to have a single format that can store all information that a drive can provide, and doesn't matter. So if the drive provides it, just save it, and to use it or not to use it is not my decision. So Aaru format came from the need to archive everything that the drive can give about the media that is not archived in any other format. And at the same time, as you said, big collections take a lot of space. What I found in my analysis is that it's not as simple as just doing compression, because you can just take the image and compress it using WinRAR or 7zip, and you have some savings. But most of the time, you need something that's integrated, so you can still run and do extraction without having to previously decompress the image. So it needs to be integrated in the image format. And also, I found that on many cases, you can have on a single disk repeated data. So for example, if you have, you take the Macintosh installation disk, the Mac OS 10 installation disk, that disk contains all the languages. That can be 15, 10, 25 languages. And on all of that, the code is repeated. So you're getting 25 times the same thing on the disk. So one of the things that Aaru does is before compressing it, will looks for duplicates and doesn't store duplicates. So that's what is called deduplication. So it's in this sense, it was designed for archival because it's designed to save everything. It doesn't care if you will use it or not. If it's available, it will save it. Save everything and deduplicate it and compress it so it doesn't take too much space and you can still access it at any time.
I love it. Yeah, it's been super. It's super easy to use as well. One thing I didn't realize it was going to be that easy when I started using it, because I've been using various different formats for the past couple of decades, of course, and then I was looking at this Aaru format and I was like, okay, but why do we need another standard? We all know that more standards are more better, right? So now we have Aaru format, but what does that mean? Is that just another ISO format? No. As he said, it collects everything, and then it's up to the user to define what they actually do with that information. And I love that approach because it's very it's focused on archival instead of focused on immediate use, because then you can transform it into something that's usable through other means as well. And I really like that approach. So that's one of the reasons why I really like Aaru too.
Exactly. Also, some things that the Aaru format supports is the auditing of the hardware usage, because this is important in some museums, at least I found it important for other kind of archivers. I mean, we're setting the first steps on computing on digital archiving. But on other things, for example, coming back to Egyptian archaeology, you have an audit of everything. So what camera was used, what film stock was used, what laboratory took that film stock and converted that to photo, what photo paper was used. So all these steps on the acquisition, Aaru save them as well. So if you take a disk and dump it with a, I don't know, a Pioneer drive, the Aaru format will say, okay, from this sector to this sector, I used a Pioneer drive with this model and with this serial number. So you have that auditing process expected by missions of how the artifact was digitized. So that's also that something that other formats don't really support because they tend to depend on sidecars, external files, and you lose them. You always lose them. You always just take one file. So no, Aaru format just puts everything on a single file. So you will not lose the auditing of that file because that auditing is inside it. It's inside the Aaru format. And also I made it very extensible because since the existence of Aaru format, we have added, I don't know, about 25 new things that I did not even contemplate to exist when I created the first version of Aaru format. And they were just as easy as adding a new field with a new number and say, okay, this is this. And even check it, and I have, this is not still implemented on Aaru itself because the hardware support is not added. But they have converted a Laserdisc dump, I really mean analog video, to Aaru format. So it's something that the design of Aaru format allows you, because as long as it can be split in blocks, that's the basic construction, and using, okay, analog video, what blocks are there? Well, they're called frames there. So as long as you can split it in parts, Aaru format can save it. Doesn't matter what it is, it can save it.
Fantastic. So with Aaru format now, it's in version 2. Is that right?
No, we're still in version 1.
We're still in version 1, so we're looking at version 2.
Yes.
Yes. So let's dive into the future of Aaru. What's happening now? You cut 5.3 this morning. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. Morning for you. Yes.
Yes.
Me, what midnight.
Yeah, fantastic. So now it's out for everyone to use, and of course, if you head over to aru.app, you can see the new fancy website as well with all new documentation on how to use it and everything. So definitely for anyone who's listening or viewing this, definitely go and check that out. So what's happening now? Of course, you'll be supporting 5.3. You talked about patch releases as well for 5.3 because no software is bug-free. But what's next? What's happening in the next version? What's going to be the next version? Is it going to be 5.5, 5.7, or 6.0?
Yeah, the next version is going to be 6.0. We're already in Alpha 6, so it's not like we have been sitting on the laurels. So we're still working on it. And the first things that I've been working on is a little optimization on speed, because speed is not the most important thing, but I mean, it's still important. So, right now, the slowest parts of Aaru are getting a checksum of an image and dumping. So those two are the most the slowest parts of Aaru. And I've been these days optimizing the checksums. So right now I have a speed increase of between 5 and 11 times on the checksums. So I will post on my blog progress. No, I will not say weekly or daily or something like that, but when I have something to talk about, I will post about it. So you will see a blog about the checksums very soon. And also the other plan, as I said, we're planning on a new version of Aaru format, because well, we can adapt Aaru format version 1 to for the few things that we need to support right now that are the negative sectors on CDs. What we're going to do with Aaru format version 2 is optimize for a use case that we didn't really expect to see. So when I designed the Aaru format version 1, I was expecting people to dump Blu-rays. That was my target, like 120 gigas. So I didn't test anything bigger. And it worked with 120 gigas, everything worked properly. But then Robin came and tried to make a 1 tera image. And we found that it works, like if you have a very big patience. So we discovered a little failure on the design because nobody's perfect. A little failure on the design that after 120 gigas, the speed of the Aaru format version 1 becomes to decrease exponentially. So to the point that a normal dump like, using Aaru format is about 10 megabytes per second. And when dumping 1 tera, the speed becomes like 1,000 of that. So 10 kilobytes per second. So that's one of the most important ways of using Aaru format version 2. Another change is that, as said, we have everything done in C#, but we have a lot of interest on Aaru format. A lot of people want to use them on their emulator. Not just use them as an intermediate step between other formats. They want to use it directly. And the problem is that because it's in C# and most emulators are not done in C#, they have some they have the problem that they will need to basically rewrite Aaru format to use them on their emulator, and that's not fair. That's not good. So one of the changes of Aaru format version 2 is going to be a complete rewrite as a externally usable library in C. So an emulator, any other software that wants to use Aaru format wouldn't have to re-implement it from scratch. Could just use our library, knowing that they have the same support that Aaru does using the format. So those are the two biggest changes for version 2. And obviously, while we're working on it, we will be adding support for floppy fluxes and Laserdisc proper support, not just a test done in an evening. But as I said, this change could have been done on version 1, but version 2 is those two changes. The problem with escalating to terabytes of data and the problem of being used by other software.
That's a big improvement in usability of Aaru format then, having that library. And so anyone can just use that instead.
Yes.
So what are you looking for right now? So as development is happening for 6.0, what are you all, the development team here, what are you all looking for from the community? Do you want them to try out the alphas? Bug issues? How do we, what do you want from the community? Do you want their feedback? How do you want to handle things like that?
My plans for the 6.0, I say, because we may introduce some bugs that just transparently corrupt data. My plan is when there's something huge, there's something big to show, I will create an alpha with a little footnote that it may generate invalid data for people to test. So people are, in these days, people are used to just get the latest nightly and so on, but we cannot allow that because we're a software that if something is wrong, if I have a later change by mistake, I can just erase your hard disk. I don't want that. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to make it easy for you to find that bug. So what we will do is, as soon as there's a feature to show, we'll do internal testing, see that nothing explodes. They're not going to erase your hard disk or make your valuable CD become a toaster, and then publish an alpha version for the community to test. But we do not recommend, unless we specifically ask users to do it, to download and compile it. We are not able to ensure you that it's not going to break something. So don't do it unless you know what you're doing.
I think that's wise wise words for anyone using alpha software. Please don't, first of all, and then be careful for sure. So you said you already have a few alphas out there. Is there anything? Are there any features right now? I would imagine no, but are there any features now or in the near future that you would like users to try out?
Yeah, we're making a graphical interface.
Very nice.
Because, Matt has made a graphical interface just for dumping, but Aaru has many other functions. So we need a graphical interface for all of that function. So the idea here is not to bypass Matt's work, it's not to go over Matt's work. So the two graphical interface will coexist, but to have a graphical interface that allows you to use absolutely all features of Aaru. So that's something that indeed the previous 5 alphas were even before 5.3, but they were only the graphical interface. And that's what we're working on. So the graphical interface is something that when it's ready to show, I'm sure users will find a lot of bugs on it. And that's one of the things that I intend to hopefully have ready for the time we release 6.0, because indeed the graphical interface has been on alpha for 2 years already, but it just was focused on other parts of the software. We also have right now since alpha 6, that was I made it a few weeks ago, we have a new command line interface. So we still have the normal command line interface, but we have made it more user friendly. So instead of when dumping saying dumping sector 100 of 1 million, it will show a progress bar. Those little things that make it easier to use.
That sounds great. I'm definitely looking forward to trying that user interface out. Right now, I'm using MPF because it's just so damn easy. So it's fantastic. But yeah, having a user interface for all the other function as well. So that would be extracting files, converting images to different formats, things like that.
Yes, all of that will be in the new graphical interface. And also we have planned some feature. I cannot guarantee you that's going to be on 6.0 or maybe on a later version, but we have planned to allow you to mount file systems. So not even needing to open the graphical interface to extract the files, but just see it as a drive in your computer. So for example, see the column, and the column is your the compact disk interactive dump that you made a year ago that Windows doesn't support that file system, but Aaru will make it appear as it does. But I say I cannot guarantee you this is going to be available for 6.0. It's going to be in one of the alphas, so you could at least take a look at it. But finishing it requires more testing, and I will not guarantee that it's 6.0, except in that. Same.
Really cool. So 6.0 is definitely focused on usability and user interfaces and making sure it's easy to implement into other tools with the library, having a user interface, and also be able to handle really, really large media.
Yes, in the end you can reduce it to that. So 6.0 is a release of care. So we already have particularly all the features we wanted, except books here and there. So right now it's only expanding those features to be better, faster, smaller, so take less memory, and easier to use, not only for end users, but also for us and other developers. So that's a way to reduce the focus of 6.0. And that also englobes the Flux support and the Aaru remote support, because all of that they're not really features. They are really ways to use existing features easier. Because we already support floppies, we don't support Flux floppies, and we need intermediate to convert the Flux into images we support. So we, in the end, just adding better support for the features we have.
Awesome. Robin or Joseph, do you have any questions for the dev team?
As I was saying, we really look forward for broadening the community of Aaru, because we know that broadening the community will bring obviously more eyes on the tool, more use cases, and so that's something that we are really looking into. Maybe we'll talk maybe a bit later. I don't know, Jonas, I don't remember, but also that we are looking into having people being able to invest into the project. So that's something also that at least my institution wants to, is that obviously if you want to strengthen the project, at some point you need to make it possible for the dev team to actually make some part of their time being paid. So that's something also we want to have a look at, and broadening the use also might bring other institutions and those institutions that are not maybe not focusing on game preservation, because we know that that's the main focus, and we know that digital preservation most challenging cases are usually in the gaming environment, but there are obviously a lot of, if not all, institutions that have digital media that are rotting on shelves and that need to be taken care of. So that's something that if you broaden and if you make it more simple, the use of Aaru in any way, you make it more successful. The preservation preservation missions that everyone wants to fulfill. So that's something a lot of people are not doing what they should be doing because they lack tools, and that's something we can see very often. You lack tools, and having a tool that is open source, that is evolving very quickly thanks to the whole dev team, is something very important, and that's why I think Joseph and I and our institutions are trusting a lot that Aaru is going to become a very important tool for the coming years.
I really hope so. Yes.
Joseph, do you have any questions for the dev team right now?
Yes, sorry, I have an issue with my camera. Yes, I agree. We need now to gain trust from institutions. So as I said earlier, we have a very big project here in Japan to work with such institutions. As much as possible, I will use mainly Aaru to do the job. We are going to work with a very large sample of data, around 5,000 floppy disk dumps, and dumps from various platforms. No games. Mostly, I would say, floppy disks that were distributed with magazines in Japan, and also materials distributed with Japanese computers. So I think with this big temple, shortly we'll be able to improve compatibility in Aaru. So again, very big expectations for the months to come.
Awesome, thank you. I know we have a public question here as well on Twitch right now. It was from, let me see, People Toast. Let's see, there we go. Find it again. Are there any plans on how to dat Aaru dumps yet?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, are there any plans on how to dat Aaru dumps in other systems like redump or something like that? Do you know?
Well, that doesn't depend on me.
Yeah, true.
So the thing is that some groups have some requirements, and while we can adapt to some of them, there are others that we just cannot. So one thing that Matt did was with DigQE, now MPF, formerly known as DigQE, is basically proving that the Aaru created the same dumps as the Redum software. And what they decided is, okay, we don't want to accept. So that doesn't depend on me. We've made all that inside our goal of preservation. That's still compatible with them, and if they decide they don't, well, the day they decide they want, then we will support it.
Mhm.
But unless that comes, that's out of our abilities. We cannot combine them, and we also do not see that way because, let's say, the idea of Aaru format is to save everything the drive saves. So if you only want part of that, then just take it out and get it, ignore it from the Aaru format. So we cannot do anything more for them.
Yeah, since you do save everything, everything is there, so we can easily extract all the information that we need. So it's yeah.
We do have all the checksums in the file too, so if they use another checksum or something, that's also not a problem.
For
Yeah,
sure.
we support all the checksums they do and everything. So
Yeah, no, I
if
think that
another group decides to use another checksum, we can add support for it, but it still depends on that group to accept our terms or not.
yeah, I think I think you're spot on. It's not the responsibility of the Aaru team, the Aaru development team. It is the responsibility of someone else to extract the information and make sense of that information. Aaru is an archival tool. It is not a reporting tool like that. So yeah, absolutely agree. That's the public question that we had in the chat. So I think that's it. Do you have anything else that you want to bring up today on today's stream? Just try Aaru.
Yeah. So one thing I always bring up is that if you like something and not just Aaru, you like something, spend money on it. Because in this world, while we can have dreams and we can say whatever we want, this world is move my money.
Mhm.
So if you like Aaru, spend money on Aaru. If you like WinRAR, spend money on WinRAR. So if you like us, you like what we're doing, if you like what we plan to do, please spend money on us because we need it as well as you need it. I mean, we're not working for free. Anything that's hitting me, anything that listen to me, you're not working for free, and we're giving you this for free. We're not asking anything in exchange of this, but we still need it. So if you like what we're doing, if you like our goal of preservation, even if you only can give like $5 a month, okay, you give $5 a month. 10 people more like you that make 50, 100 people make 500. So give whatever you can, or whatever you want. But if you like what we're doing, if you like our goal, please spend money on us. So that's the last thing I wanted to say.
I think
some other thing, maybe if anyone has media or floppies or something that they want or need dumped with old data on it, or some rare prototype or whatever, just get in contact with us and we can work something out. We're spread around the world, so you can send it to us, we dump it, upload it and preserve it and move the media back to you. That's also not a problem.
Also, just come talk to us. We're on Discord and we're on GitHub and all places. And we want to know what you want to have, what you want to use Aura for, what features you want, and what bugs you want fixed quickly, stuff like that.
yeah,
Come
awesome.
hang out.
Yeah. So where should people contact you? How should they get in contact with you? Aaru.app, of course, is the main website for documentation and getting the latest news. Where should people go to contact you?
Well, recently it has had a discussion. So if you have something to speak about, to contact us, and it's not a bug, you don't need to do a bug report. You can open a discussion and then we can discuss it. We're also on the BGPC, BGPC Discord server, and I think we have a link there in the web page. And also we are on IRC if you still use that technology. But on the Libera server and the Libera network, we're there. And you can just drop there, and we are also on Twitter. So we have the official Twitter account for Aaru, and then there's my personal account. But please don't send me a message to the official account because it just doesn't ping me. There's a message there, so just send me a message directly. And there are many ways to contact that. I mean, if you want, the GitHub discussion, we have Discord, and yes, anything that you think you want, anything that you want to request, or just anything that you want to talk about, send us a message on any of these places.
Awesome. We did get one more question, and I think that's going to be the last question before we wrap up today. We did get one question from Tony here. Has there been any efforts to reach out to existing other popular tool developers like ISObuster, Daemon Tools that might be able to incorporate an Aaru image or an Aaru format image? I realize a user could extract a standard image type to use with these programs, but direct integration can be a great improvement to increase user acceptance of the tool.
Well, the thing is that many of these tools are commercial tools, and they see us as a competitor.
Mhm.
Even if we are not really, I don't think that's a competitor. So the only people we have contacted with are emulators, but not this kind of tool. And particularly about one of those tools that I will not say which one of them, that's a piracy tool. Like literally, they have taken a format that already existed and they have encrypted it to force you to buy their software to pirate games. So we really do not want any association with that one that I will not name, because we're not a piracy tool. And we are on the verge on some legislation to be seen as that, and we do not want the slightest relationship to this piracy tool. About other tools, other imaging tools, if they're legit, they're not piracy tools, like for example, WinImage, that's a legit tool. If they want to do it, still is like the Rodum thing, it's not our effort to do it, it's theirs. We will provide any help. If they want to support Aaru format, there's the specification, there's the source code. They can look at it. On version 2, we will provide the library. We will not prevent them from using that. But it's not our responsibility to go ask them to do that. And on some of them, we don't even want them. We cannot prevent them because of the open source license. So we cannot prevent anybody from using it. But we would prefer not to piracy tools using our code or our format. But it's their responsibility, not ours. So it's not us who must reach to them. It's just them. We are supporting their images. If they don't support our images, it's them, not us.
I think you brought up the library again. I think once that's out, it would be easier for them if they wanted to implement Aaru format into their tools as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. I want to congratulate the development team again for the 5.3 release. Kick-ass job. Awesome. Fantastic job, everyone. You are an amazing team. It's super fun to see all the development happening in the channels and all the discussions.
One thing that Matt has just reminded me, sorry for interrupting you, is that with 5.3 we have NuGet packages. So if you are a C# developer and you want to use Aaru format or you want to use our algorithms for dumping, as long as you respect open source license, you can just get their NuGet packages. So you don't need to use Aaru as a software. We have Aaru parameterized in libraries that you can already use them on NuGet. So sorry for interrupting you.
Nope, all good. That's really great news as well. So thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, with that, just check out aaru.app for all your Aaru use cases. I know, Natalia, you're gonna post a blog as well, I believe. In a few blogs, you talked about this. Those are going to be on clownia.com, I'm guessing. So
yeah, it will be in blog.clownia.com. At the moment, I will try to make a link from blog.aaru.app so that if you don't remember which one it is, it just shows you the same one. It's the only thing I blog about, so it's not going to be anything else.
awesome. Yeah, so thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Rebecca, Michael, and Natalia, for being awesome and yeah, doing a launch party with us here today. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of the week.
Bye.
Bye bye.